everyone. Thanks so much for streaming with us here on ABC News Live. I'm Kira Phillips. Thousands of Americans striking across the country, and now looming strikes from healthcare to Hollywood, as 60,000 film and TV crew members could walk off the set. What's driving the strikes and workers' demands in just a moment. At least 46 people have been killed and dozens more injured in a massive building fire in Taiwan that raged for hours. 120 families occupied that building, including many elderly tenants. Officials say the blaze is Taiwan's deadliest one in decades. Deaths now reported after hours of gun battles in the Lebanese capital of Beirut, where protests have broken out over the investigation into that massive explosion in the city's port last year. The Lebanese army warning citizens to go home after protesters gathered outside Beirut's Justice Palace, saying anyone armed on those streets would be shot. But we begin with those 10,000 John Deere workers going on strike, already hitting the picket lines in Illinois. But the strikes don't stop there, as some possible walkouts could now impact health care to Hollywood. Terry Moran is tracking the latest for us.
10,000 workers at John Deere hit the picket lines in Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas. They argued that even as the agricultural equipment company's profits grew by 61% in recent years, and their CEO's salary grew by 160% during the pandemic, their pay has actually been cut.
We need to let them know that they can't continue to take our money and take our money and take our money.
Across the country, labor is on the march. In California and Oregon, 24,000 nurses and other healthcare workers at Kaiser Permanente voted to authorize a strike over pay and better working conditions. Meanwhile, union workers at Kellogg's cereal plants have been on strike for more than a week, angry about long hours, including 7-day work weeks.
Our number one priority is to get back to the negotiations table and reach a contract so our employees can get back to their jobs and their lives.
And soon, Hollywood may see a walkout. 60,000 film and TV crew members could walk off the job Monday over what they claim are unfair working conditions.
Our hours are really grueling, and we need not just rest between the workdays and over the weekend, but an actual meal break during the day.
And across the country, a record number of workers are quitting their jobs. 4.3 million Americans, or 2.9% of the workforce, left their jobs in August. Many are looking for better work conditions and pay, especially with inflation on the rise. Several forces are driving all this as the pandemic eases. Companies are seeing sky-high demand and very tight labor markets. They can't fill jobs. Workers are noticing that top executives and bosses are getting paid. And so for the first time in a long, long time, workers have the upper hand. Kira?
Terry, thanks so much. We know you're on your way to Illinois. We will see you there from those picket lines. You know, John Deere has released a statement now, and here's what the company is saying, that they, quote, remain committed to working toward a favorable outcome for our workers and our communities. Specifically, we want to reach an agreement with the UAW that would put every employee in a better economic position. The tentative agreement, reached after weeks of negotiations, honors our commitment to work with our employees to provide them with economic progress and a rewarding career. Jonah Furman, who has been covering the John Deere strike for Labor Notes, joins me now for more insight. Jonah, you have recently wrote about John Deere supervisors actually reading from a script when they address employees. Tell us more about what you learned and were able to reveal from inside these plants.
Sure. It's been really interesting speaking to some of these salaried employees who are non-union but are siding with the strike. A lot of these are low-level managers or technical workers who have seen that the upper-level management has not kept neither union wages or salaried wages and benefits up with profits at the company. So unlike some other labor disputes, big chunks of the non-union workforce seems to be on the side of the strikers. Management in these plants has been going around, and workers have described it as heckling or making threats about closing plants, trying to get workers to accept the deal they've already rejected by 90%, and saying things like $1 an hour raise is enough while the company makes literally its most profits ever.
So basically intimidating the workers.
Yeah, I would describe it as intimidation. That's how workers have described it to me.
So why is this happening now?
It's a great question. A big part of it is that Deere is having its most profitable year on record. They're about to record something like $5.9 billion in profits. Their stock price has doubled during the pandemic, and workers' wages and benefits have just not kept up. It used to be before 1997, you work at John Deere, you get a pension with full health care after retirement, which is necessary for these grueling jobs where your body just can't take it for a full 50-year working career. So after 1997, workers' pensions were cut, the health care was cut, and now Deere wants to cut it again. Everyone hired after November 1st under Deere's proposal would have no pension at all, not to mention no retiree health care. So these are workers who are fighting for retirement justice and wages that at least keep up with inflation, which the current offer does not. And the context is Deere is making its record profits. And if you look at the books, they can afford more. There's something else going on where they're deciding not to give a fair deal.
Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing if you could see every little detail in all the books? According to some of your other articles that we've been reading, you mentioned that workers are getting penalized for not hitting certain rates. Is this cargo crisis impacting supply shortages, and is this all impacting negotiations as well?
I'm really glad you asked that. There's something at Deere called the Continuous Improvement Pay Program, and it basically means that every 6 months, your rate of production that you're expected to meet as a production worker as part of your team goes up by 2%, but wages don't go up by 2%. So they're facing the squeeze. Meanwhile, with this parts supply shortage, with the supply chain, as you mentioned, some of these plans are still being rated as if we're, in a pre-COVID economy, but parts aren't showing up, so workers can't hit their rates. There was a large arbitration that the union lost really recently before negotiations, and the new contract does nothing to address these piece rates, basically, that workers have really been frustrated by if they're on a failing plan.
And we're also seeing how this strike is influencing other protests. We're kind of watching the domino effect here. I mean, how big do you think this is going to get, Jonah?
It's really hard to say. I mean, the benefit that the John Deere workers have is that they're organized into a union. So you also see that with the film and TV strike, the IATSE workers, about 60,000, and the Kaiser healthcare workers organized across several unions, about 40,000 healthcare workers there. These are the groups that are feeling what everyone else in this economy is feeling, that the job has become unbearable during the pandemic, that wages have not kept up with the K-shaped recovery. A lot of these corporations are doing just fine, but the workers are not seeing the gains. If you're not organized into a union, you just quit the job, like we see at fast food restaurants with a piece of paper taped up. If you have a union, you have some kind of mechanism to fight back, and that's what we're seeing from these unionized workers, is that instead of individuals quitting one by one, they're saying, if we stick together and hold out, we can get a better deal.
Labor Notes writer Jonah Furman, sure appreciate your reporting. It really helps us see through this. I hope you'll continue to come back and just guide us through the various strikes that keep going.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Now to that supply chain crisis we mentioned that could end up threatening the holiday shopping season. President Biden announcing a package of measures to hopefully break the logjam and actually get things moving. Kaylee Hartung is in Los Angeles with more.
Americans are paying more for everything from diapers to new cars, and long waits are getting longer for online orders. Toys, bikes, toasters, sneakers, they're getting harder to find.
There are certain things that are not coming, that will not be here.
In order to keep your shelves full, we have to order 8 weeks in advance.
As a massive supply chain nightmare threatens the holiday shopping season, President Biden laying out the strategy to solve the crisis.
We're going to help speed up the delivery of goods all across America.
Calling on business, shipping, and labor companies to work together to end the crippling bottleneck.
FedEx and UPS are the shippers for some of our nation's largest stores. Their commitment to go all in on 24/7 operations means that businesses of all sizes will get their goods on shelves faster and more reliably.
About 40% of all U.S. imports come through Southern California's ports, but a fleet of ships is sitting idle there, containers stacked high, waiting to be unloaded. Now 2 of those ports are working around the clock. Biden's goal to cure the shipping backlog and tame the high inflation it's caused. Inflation now up nearly 5.5%. In the meantime, experts say Americans should expect to keep paying more, even at the grocery store. Eggs and meat both costing 12% more than a year ago.
The chicken has never been overpriced. Now we're paying $100 a case when we used to pay $40, $50.
And it's not just groceries. This year has seen record-breaking price jumps for children's shoes, up nearly 12%, furniture up more than 11%, and even going out to dinner will cost you an unprecedented 5% more than last year. So, Kira, the Port of Los Angeles here now operating 24/7. This morning, we've seen this massive ship behind me being unloaded. That's good news for folks who might have ordered something online, have been waiting longer than they expected. The pandemic pushed so much of our shopping online, and e-commerce sales have soared. Amazon says they have already sold 1 million toys this holiday season. That's just in the last 10 days. They say LOL dolls and Lego sets are among their fastest selling items. Sounds like consumers are shopping earlier than ever and not taking any chances, Kira.
Kaylee Hartung in Los Angeles at one of the busiest ports in the country, by the way. Thank you so much, Kaylee. And in the ongoing battle against COVID, the FDA is now set to meet on whether to authorize booster shots for some recipients of the Moderna and J&J vaccines. Steve Osunsami has the latest on that.
Americans who got the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine could learn in the next few days if the FDA thinks they should get another shot. And authorities are considering booster shots for Americans who received 2 shots from Moderna too. The FDA is going over data from the drug companies this morning. Public hearings are set for today and tomorrow.
We have the vaccine supply and we will be ready to hit the ground running as soon as any additional boosters are authorized.
Moderna is suggesting a booster shot with half the dose, delivered 6 months after the second dose of the Moderna vaccine. Johnson & Johnson is suggesting a booster shot between 2 and 6 months after their single shot. Once the FDA authorizes the extra dose, the CDC needs to sign off with specific recommendations, and that's expected to happen as soon as the end of next week. Dr. Fauci, in a White House briefing, is underlining that we may need the help of vaccines for a very long time.
It's going to be very difficult, at least in the foreseeable future, and maybe ever, to truly eliminate this highly transmissible virus. How can we get to that level of control? Obviously, it's vaccination.
There's been a lot of discussion in public health about mixing vaccines, getting a booster from Pfizer, for example, when your original doses came from Moderna. New data from the National Institutes of Health shows that in early studies, it appears to be safe and may be effective, but more research is needed. And overnight, we're hearing from the face of vaccine hesitancy in the NBA. Star Kyrie Irving is breaking his silence on Instagram Live after the Brooklyn Nets told him he can't play unless he gets the vaccine.
It's not about the money, baby. It's not always about the money. It's about choosing what's best for you. You think I really want to lose money?
A new study from the Kaiser Family Foundation says that more than 90,000 Americans likely died this summer because they didn't get vaccinated. And the study says that COVID-19 was the second leading cause of death in America last month after heart disease. Kira?
Wow. Steve Osunsami. Thank you. And earlier on Good Morning America, George Stephanopoulos spoke to Dr. Ashish Jha about whether or not these booster shots will even be approved.
Let's talk about this FDA meeting on boosters, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. Should we expect they're going to be approved?
Yeah, good morning, George. Thanks for having me back. I do. The data on Johnson & Johnson is overwhelmingly clear. A little less clear on whether you need the Moderna booster, but I think overall it leans that way. I expect both of them to get authorized.
What do you make of this idea of mixing a booster? Say if you got the J&J shot first, now you can get a Moderna or Pfizer booster.
Yeah, immunologically, it makes a lot of sense. We have that new data out that was mentioned in the last report. I don't think it's a big deal if you got a Moderna or Pfizer to mix it. It's clearly safe. It probably is not necessarily much more beneficial. Where there does seem to be some benefit is adding a Moderna or a Pfizer to a J&J vaccine. Again, it's preliminary data, but there is some evidence that may be better off doing that.
And it should make it easier to distribute, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got right now plenty of all of these vaccines. And so really at this point, any booster is going to be really helpful for people, especially if you're in a high-risk group.
And what about kids between 5 and 11? We've been waiting for the approval for vaccines for that age group as well.
Yeah, I think that's next week. The FDA advisory committee is going to meet next week to go over that. And, you know, I was hoping that CDC would sign off before Halloween. Probably will happen a few days after Halloween, but it's coming very soon.
Are we getting to the point where we're getting beyond the pandemic yet?
You know, we're certainly getting to a point where it is not going to necessarily dominate our lives the way it has for the last 18, 20 months. We've got boosters. We'll have boosters for everybody. We're going to have therapies. Really are going to be entering a new phase of the pandemic. We still have work to do. A lot of people are still getting infected and dying. But if we can drive those vaccination numbers higher, yeah, I think we can start putting this thing under control.
And our thanks to Dr. Jha for that interview. Well, coming up, we follow one Texas woman banned from getting an abortion in her state. When we come back, she travels to a clinic in the center of the Supreme Court case that some say could lead to Roe versus Wade being overturned. And welcome back to ABC News Live. We turn now to the legal fight over abortion rights in Texas as the most restrictive law in the nation was enacted, blocked, and then reinstated within days. ABC's Rachel Scott has a personal look now at how these changes are impacting women in real time as she follows one young lady who travels out of state to get an abortion.
This isn't the senior trip 21-year-old college student Maddie had hoped for.
It's always my favorite winter.
But when she decided she wanted an abortion, she knew she would have to leave Texas to get one.
When she told me that I was measuring at 10.5 weeks, I just cried. I was heartbroken and terrified because I felt like the only option that I knew I had was gone.
How did you tell your parents?
And I was like, okay, I'm pregnant. I'm sorry. Because at that moment, I felt like I was a disappointment. After that, I did. I started researching with the materials that Planned Parenthood gave me and looked into Louisiana. And Louisiana has booked out 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yes.
How many clinics would you say you called altogether?
Easily 30, if not more.
Nearby states have been flooded with calls since the most restrictive abortion ban in the nation went into effect, banning procedures as early as 6 weeks into a woman's pregnancy and before some women even know they're pregnant. And at 6 weeks, you didn't even know you were pregnant.
Not even close. I was still living my life as regular and as carefree of a college kid as I could be.
Maddie called the only clinic left in Mississippi. They had just one appointment. She drove more than 400 miles, but learned the clinic couldn't schedule the actual procedure for another week. That meant she had to go back to Texas and return to Mississippi for a second time.
I am 13 weeks pregnant right now. I found out at 10.5, and I'm not in a place to have a baby. I have graduation to look forward to. I have me trying to start my whole career and my entire life ahead of me. And my life is on hold right now.
You didn't plan to be pregnant at this period in your life?
Absolutely not. I was in a committed relationship, but things happened. It didn't work out. But I was on birth control. I didn't want a family.
You know, I think people watching this may have the question of, if you were on birth control, how could you possibly be pregnant? How would you respond to people that say that?
Birth control's not 100%.
So if your plan does work, in less than 24 hours, you would no longer be pregnant. What does that mean to you?
It means I can get back to my life. I can throw myself into my school, catch back up, hopefully get ahead.
We followed her as she traveled back to Mississippi. The clinic director there says they've had a dramatic increase in patients since the Texas law went into effect.
The new Texas law is not deterring people from getting an abortion. We've been even busier because now we're seeing even a lot more patients from Texas. We've almost doubled our capacity, honestly. Right now, our phones are ringing nonstop because of this.
There were so many emotions going on at once that it was a blur. And I think, honestly, just the fear of the unknown was ever present.
My name is Jane, and I'm a nurse, and I'm going to help you get ready for your procedure today.
The wait was long.
Just have a seat right here.
But Maddie was confident in the choice she was making.
I have had people voice their opinions to me over the past few weeks that I've known that I've been pregnant, and some are saying that they're extremely supportive of me and it's my body, my choice, and some are not. Some are saying that they still support my decision, but they wish that I chose a different option. But no matter what they've said, my decision hasn't wavered, because it's my body and it's my choice. So it's a lot to be going through it, but I'm glad that I'm able to kind of shine a light, give people a little bit of that sense of control back that I feel like I've been lacking in this process.
Hours after Maddie returned to Texas, a federal judge put the law on pause, ruling that it was unconstitutional.
Of course, the day of my procedure and finally getting home, we found out this huge news. Good news, but still huge. And I was like frustrated. I was like, wow, just one more day. And I possibly could have avoided all of this trouble of having to go to Mississippi twice. First driving, then flying back the same day as my procedure.
But that ruling did not hold. A U.S. appeals court reinstating the law just 48 hours later. Once again, bringing nearly all abortions in the state to a halt.
There were so many unneeded obstacles that I managed to get over, but many women won't. The need to move my entire life essentially out of state for a day and have to go through such an emotional process and not be able to immediately go home, that's uncalled for. Abortions are health care, and it is my body, my choice, just like it's that stranger's body and her choice. And no one should have to go through what I've had to go through.
And our thanks to Rachel Scott for that personal journey. Coming up, honoring Indigenous Peoples Day. When we come back, how the younger generation is using social media to educate others about Native history and preserving their culture. And welcome back. As more Americans are honoring the immense contributions Indigenous people have provided to our country, the younger generation is using social media platforms such as TikTok to educate others about their Native history, hoping to help preserve their culture. Take a look.
People don't even think we exist to this day. It's like, oh man, I didn't even know that you guys were still alive.
We have this identity where we don't necessarily feel Mexican, we don't necessarily feel American, so we're like stuck right in the middle. And a lot of us end up in that reconnection process.
When I first joined TikTok, I started seeing TikToks about people talking about Indigenous people, and it was just misinformation being passed around. So I wanted to fix that.
I started to make content teaching about our traditions here, some of our history and stuff like that, and our truth.
The first TikTok I produced was part of the Hot Seat Chair Challenge. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna upload this. Let's see how it goes. When I wake up, I just see my phone blowing up. It was just a huge, huge, huge surprise.
What drew me to TikTok was this kind of the creativity aspect of it all, right? Like you can make your own videos, you can do your own thing. That was one of the first things that I started doing out, was just straight up just doing comedy style.
Is that my cousin over there? Let me wave at him and see if he notices.
Look over there, Timothy. It's a native. He's blessing the land.
Started to show off my jingle dress that my auntie gave me.
Early 1900s, during the flu pandemic, a little girl got sick. A medicine man had a dream of a jingle dress.
A lot of people really admired that, and they were really happy that I was showing off my culture in that way.
I think it was very encouraging to see more people sharing about Hawaiians, Native Hawaiians, sharing our history and our culture.
I've actually liked to raise awareness on issues that affect Indigenous communities back in Mexico.
People like not knowing much about Hawaii, and they're so fascinated, like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more. So I started making more content about our culture on TikTok.
People don't know about residential schools. People don't know the kind of things that the government and the justice system really put our people in.
I see a lot in the future for Indigenous TikTok. I would try to embrace other Indigenous youth and people to come on and like show themselves, not to be scared anymore. Because I know growing up, it was kind of scary just like showing your own skin and just like being comfortable in it.
I just hope more people send more love and positivity to the content creators that they love to watch.
I've always celebrated my Indigenous roots. I've always been part of it. It's always been part of me. So I try to encourage people and educate them on this. No, it's in you. It's waiting for you to bloom it.
For the non-Indigenous allies, I think it's really important for them to educate themselves on all the Indigenous problems and Indigenous history, because as us Indigenous people and creators, they expect so much from us.
I feel so blessed to say that I love myself as a person. I'm proud of myself. I am worth it. That is like my ancestors' best dream, is for us just to go and pursue who we are as a First Nations person. And I'm so glad that I can be one of the people that are making footprints in the ground for our youth to follow in.
And thank you so much to our ABC News digital team for that incredible story. Well, that does it for us. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern. Have a fabulous rest of your day.
The Nobel Prize is a tribute to all Americans. Peace in this nation and in the world is due in large measure to the willingness of Negro Americans to suffer injustice and persecution, and their ability to respond to their oppressors with love.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.